Ready to go? Yeah. This is the first day I want it.
No, I'm gonna say
He's doing something.
Third day, and then we'll get something the last day.
Wow. They put those hot black stones
He
on
threw
my
a guy out
spine.
the window with his
I like those. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's go ahead and call today's meeting to order. The call order of the regular session of the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission. Can we please verify quorum?
Scott Moran,
Here.
Ron Rice, John McKinley,
Here.
Tim Bowers,
Here.
Danny Bryant,
Here.
Matias Rosales,
Here.
Alicia Zerano, Gary Black,
Here.
Wayne Idy,
Present.
Paul White.
Here.
Chairman, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read some information for the public before we continue. If you have parked in the rear employee gated parking lot, please immediately move your car to the front north parking lot to avoid having your car locked in. There is no public egress from the hallway to the south parking lot. The only public entry into the building is through the north entrance near the auditorium. All access to the DDS building is limited to staff only as security precaution. If you wish to speak at the podium, please sign in at the sign-in sheet at the table by the rear door. Before you speak at the podium, please state your name, address for the record. Please address the chairman and do not speak to the audience or staff. If you do have handouts, please give them to the commission so they could provide to admin to distribute to, so staff could distribute to the commissioners. If you show information on the overhead projector, please give them to the admin staff to become part of the permanent record. Restrooms and drinking fountains are down the hallway behind this meeting room. Please feel free to use the facilities as needed. No food or beverage other than water are allowed in the meeting room. Thank you. We can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, elected chairman for the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission for calendar year 2020.
Chair, will you accept the motion?
Yes,
I
sir.
would nominate yourself.
I second it.
Nominate myself.
Yourself.
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion, please?
Got it? Scott? Or Tim? I heard somebody over. I'll second it.
Oh, yeah, I second it.
go ahead.
Yeah,
I
I
thought you
second it.
did.
Any discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to nominate himself. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Nay. All right. Item number 4. I'm sorry, I like to bring some fun to the meetings. Elected vice chairman for the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission for calendar year 2020. Currently, it is Mr. Bryant. Do we have any discussion, nominations?
Commissioner, would you accept the nomination?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
I present Mr. Bryant for that position.
I'll second that.
Do we not need to agree to these nominations? No? Okay. All right. We have a motion. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right. Motion carries. We have
Congratulations.
new commissioner and vice chair for the next year. All right. Moving along. We have a long agenda. Item number 5, approval of Planning and Zoning Commission regular minutes of the December 17, 2019 meeting.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion for the approval of the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or review? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, motion passes. Item number 6, rezoning case number 19-09. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, you know what's coming next. I need to recuse myself from multiple items tonight. Item number 6, rezoning case number 1909. Item number 9, special use permit case 1907. Item number 10, subdivision modifications, and item number 11, tentative plat.
Okay, so noted for the record. Staff?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Javier Barraza, Senior Planner, presenting rezoning case number 19-09. Mr. Chairman, this case might look familiar to the commission because it was heard by this commission back in December 3rd, along with minor amendment 2019 MA-02, which was approved by this commission, and it was brought back to this in front of the commission because lack of minimum size. The original request was for heavy industrial, and the zoning ordinance no longer has the heavy industrial plane, and it has to have a minimum size. That's why it's presented again. Another note is the Board of Supervisors approved minor amendment 2019 MA-02 back in January 22nd. This is a request to rezone 7.05 acres of a parcel 107.81 gross acres in size from rural area 20 acre minimum to heavy industrial 8,000 square feet minimum, located in the North Gila planning area, southeast corner of the intersection of the alignments of County 12B and County 8th Street in Yuma, Arizona. The intent is to allow the rezoning of the said 7.05 acres from RA20 to heavy industrial 8,000 square feet minimum for industrial use and parcel split. This is the vicinity and zoning map showing the portion to be rezoned, highlighted and cross-hatched towards the center of the map. Parcel 20 on the north is zone heavy industrial, is the location of Gawan Milling. Parcels 21, 22, 002, and 182, 21, 005 are parcels zone heavy industrial owned by Union Pacific. Parcels 16, 24, 6, and 5 surrounding on the west, south, and east of the subject parcel are zone rural area 20 acre minimum and improved properties. This is the site plan submitted by the applicant depicting the location of the portion to be rezoned. This is an aerial view showing the extent of the parcel in comparison to the character of the area. A blowout of the same aerial now showing the purple triangle. That's the location of the subject area to be rezoned. This is looking northeast at the intersection with Gawan Milling Entrance Road from with the intersection Highway 95. Looking east at the same intersection, now from the west of Highway 95. Looking northeast of the project site from within the property. Looking east of the project site a little closer. Looking north of the project site within the parcel. Start receiving comments from property owners. We did receive comments from MCS in favor of this rezoning. Staff recommends approval of rezoning case 1909, subject to the following performance conditions. Within 60 days of board's approval, the owner shall provide an ARS 12-1134 waiver, record an infrastructure disclosure statement, a schedule for development disclosure statement, and a navigation disclosure statement. Also, the following is scheduled for development. Within 1 year of board's approval, the owner shall split the property by means of a land division permit in accordance with Section 507 of the Yuma County zoning ordinance. Chairman, this concludes this presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? No? Any questions from the public? Applicant? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, will you take a motion?
Yes, sir.
I would recommend approval of rezoning case number 19-09 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, rezoning case passes. Item number 7, rezoning case number 19-12. Staff?
Thank you, Chairman Rosales, members of the commission. Juan Leal Rubio, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zone Division. This is rezoning case number 1912. This is a request to rezone 5 gross acres from SSB 5 to SSB 2. The property is located in the Yuma Mesa planning area at the southwest corner of Avenue 3 and 3/4 and County 16.5 in Yuma. And the intent is to create 2 parcels of 2.5 acres in size for single-family residences. This is the case map showing parcel 22 crosshatched. And the uses surrounding this property to the northeast, we have a property currently in Alfalfa, zone RA10. To the north, we have property zone SR2. Parcel 14 is in citrus or date trees. And parcels 12 and 13, also zone SR2, are the location of single-family residences. To the south and southwest, we have parcels 31, 32, and 23 zoned as SB5. And parcel 32 and 31 contain single-family residence. Parcel 23 is vacant. Parcels 48 and 51 to the east and southeast are zone SR4. Parcel 48 contains a single-family residence and 51 is vacant. Parcel 22, this is the site plan of the proposed split. This new residence is currently under construction, and the west half will be used to build another single-family residence. As part of this proposal, staff will be requesting that a land division permit be applied for and approved with a 20-foot easement along the north property line to a standard C gravel road. And this shows the different uses surrounding the property. This shows the looking west at the suburb property. This picture was taken maybe a couple months ago. The house is more completed, yes, I'm sorry. This is looking south from the suburb property, looking east from the suburb property, looking south at the existing ditch within the suburb property. And we did receive comments. MCAS, I apologize for the error. MCAS did not recommend denial. This is not in the noise zone. They're recommending a navigation disclosure statement. Staff is recommending approval of this rezoning case with the following performance conditions: that within 60 days of approval, the owner shall submit the following documents: the waiver, agricultural disclosure statement, application, range disclosure, infrastructure, and a schedule for development disclosure statement. And the following schedule for development: that they make application for a land division permit, and that they build that easement that I referred to with a gravel road standard C. They also have to make application for a land division permit, apply for a grading permit, and they need to submit certification from a licensed engineer confirming that the roadway was constructed in accordance to standard C, and that all lots be provided with the means for irrigation and access to irrigation water. And that concludes staff's presentation. Ready to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none. Any questions or concerns from the public? Applicant? Seeing none, bring it back to the commissioners. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, rezoning case number 1912 passes. Item number 8, rezoning case 19-14. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fernando Villegas, Senior Planner, presenting rezoning case 19-13. This is a request to rezone a parcel 1.77 net acres in size from light industrial to heavy industrial, 1 acre minimum, and a parcel 5 acres in size from light industrial to heavy industrial, 2 acre minimum. The subject property is located in the Yuma Mesa planning area at 13711 South Avenue 3E. The intent is to bring the existing business operation of the storage of inoperable vehicles into compliance with the Yuma County zoning ordinance. And next, we have a vicinity map, parcels 18 and 19 to the north, R zone RA10. In citrus production, parcel 11 to the west is in the city of Yuma jurisdiction owned by MCS in agriculture production, zone as military reservation. Parcel 22 to the south and east is zone light industrial and is in citrus production. The next slide shows the site plan submitted by the applicant, shows existing buildings on the subject parcels. The parcel to the north has a site-built home and accessory buildings and an office. Here we have a 2017 aerial view of the subject property. The next slide shows a picture of the subject property looking east from Avenue 3E. Another view looking west from the northeast corner of the north property line. The staff received a letter from MCAS requesting a navigation disclosure statement, and we received 2 letters from adjacent property owners in opposition. The next map shows that the property owner to the north and the property owner to the south and east are in opposition. The staff recommends approval subject to the following performance conditions. Within 60 days of approval by the board of supervisors, the owner or agent shall provide a navigation disclosure statement and a recorded warranty deed dedicating 17 feet of right-of-way on the west side of parcel 196-24-21. And performance condition number 2, within 160 days of approval by the board of supervisors, building permits shall be obtained for any structures built or installed without a permit. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the staff presentation. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, could we go back to the the neighbors that were surrounding that? Because we do have those denial from these people. So, so all in the red are against this rezoning case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you can see, we have a total of 3 property owners surrounding the subject properties. We have the same property owner for parcel 19 and 18 on the north side, and they submitted a letter in opposition. Also, the property owner to the south and east is one property owner, and he also is here. He's here today. He's in opposition.
What percentage of the,
Yes.
what percentage is that of surrounding?
Yeah, probably 75% of an area.
So does that require,
It will require during the board of supervisors meeting a supermajority vote. Yes.
4 votes?
4 out of the 5. Yes.
Was this a storage yard or a dismantling yard?
Well, maybe the property owner can describe the business better, but they are requesting a rezoning to be able to use the property for to store inoperable vehicles. In heavy industrial, they can also have dismantling of vehicles if they want to.
Did we consider any kind of screening?
The Yuma County zoning ordinance requires a screening from Avenue 3E and some buffering from adjacent properties. For example, the properties to the north are zone RA10. So a buffering, a separation from that property line is going to be required.
So that's not part of the conditions that are being recommended by staff, or is that just because that's on the zoning?
Yes, correct. We're not putting it as part of the staff report because it's already required by the zoning ordinance.
Are there any other requirements from the zoning ordinance besides that?
Buffering and screening, and those are, and building permits.
What's the screening requirement?
The zoning ordinance states that a solid wall needs to be built. Let me get it. These uses shall be screened by a solid fence or wall, and no material should be stored in such a manner as to project from or be visible from above the fence or wall. So that means that they will not be able to store vehicles on top of vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
presently it's just a storage yard, am I correct? In L1? It's just a storage yard in L1?
The light industrial zoning district doesn't allow the storage of inoperable vehicles. They can get a special use permit, but the applicant decided to request rezoning to heavy industrial.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, now you said a solid wall, is that brick?
The zoning ordinance states that it's solid fence or wall.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily have to be block or concrete then.
It's not that specific, no.
And how high? What is the height? Does that come out in?
Oh, what's the height, 10 feet? We, well, we don't have a height limit. I think that with a permit, they can ask for a fence higher than 6 feet. We don't ask for building permits for fences less than 6 feet, but they can go higher if they want to.
And in this case, since the ordinance says it's supposed to cover the view, so I'm assuming it would have to be as high as needed, at least 6 feet. And if they want higher, they have to go through the engineering process to do a 10-foot wall if needed, if they want to be able to stack a car on top of another. And they have to block the view from the street.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe zoning ordinance limits the maximum height of walls or fences to 6 feet. So if they want to construct a wall or a fence higher than 6 feet, they would have to request a variance, which would have to be heard by the Board of Adjustment.
Right, and go through the engineering process as stated. Okay.
And if the variance is approved, they have to go through the building permit process.
Right. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners before I bring up the public or the applicant?
How did this case come about? Was there a violation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the property owners were cited, and we have a pending zoning violation.
All right. Any further questions from the commissioners? No? This time I'll open it up to the public. If anyone from the public would like to comment in regards to this zoning case? Please state your name and address for the record.
John Lowry, 3578 East County, 15th Street. I'm the owner of the property east, and my wife and I are the owner of the property east and south of the property. One comment I made, you might notice in that one photo from the northeast corner of this property, they're already double stacking the cars. Another thing too, you just had a case where you did approve a heavy industrial switch. I think that was a very common sense decision because it's out there where there's heavy industrial in the area by the railroad tracks. It makes common sense that you would do that. This is all an agricultural land around there, and I stated questions about it, why that it doesn't really belong there. So if you approve this, you're just approving something that appears to be in violation to begin with. Anybody have any questions to me or understand why I don't like this?
If I may ask a question, so is there any drainage that comes off the property or any fluids that are dumped onto the ground?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean, that's just a possibility.
But you haven't seen evidence of it?
No, I have
Okay.
not at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public? If not, applicant, would the applicant come on state?
Hello, Monty Sanders, 3360 South 15th Avenue, Yuma, Arizona. I'm the property owner, both lots. And I purchased the property for the purpose of a tow yard. And then that's the reason we're going through the rezoning process, is because you can have a tow yard, but you can't store vehicles, which is an oxymoron, but that's why we're here today. So I've had the ADAQ out for 3 times this year, passed all those inspections with no issue, which is from the state. Because of anonymous claims. So the county's been out multiple times inspecting, and only the last time did we come to this scenario. So that's why I'm requesting it. It's zoned light and heavy industrial. It's in the fly zone, military base, everything south of there. That's what's there. The agriculture, it's ag south, but it's on light industrial. It was prior to that, it was a transfer station for a dump. So we bought it not thinking we'd have any kind of issues.
How long ago did you buy this property?
I think it was 2014 or 15. I went to the county to verify that it was going to be, I could be used as a tow yard. I didn't realize it. You tow vehicles is improper. Well, we already had this case, but you can tow vehicles, but you can't store them, which is That's why I'm in this situation. But I spent the money buying the property because it was rezoned light or heavy industrial. That's what I found out when I bought the property. So I figured I'd never have an issue because I could rezone it if there was an issue.
Any questions?
I'm sorry?
You have brought up.
Yes, that's correct. We've been operating this business I'm actually just operating south of there at 14165 since 2010, 2011. Don't quote me exactly what day, but been operating in that area for basically the last decade. And like I said, this was George Hollis owned this. He ran a dump for the city transfer station, and they sort of all recycled junk, all kinds of stuff. And I had him clean that up, and I bought the property, I cleaned it up, and we put autos there instead.
Questions from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
The question of staff.
Let's go, let Mr. Bryan answer first.
I was going to inquire if this was to be approved by the board, they would require some kind of fencing. What's your idea of fencing?
The fencing, we're gonna fence well, most of it's fenced, only, there'd be one small piece of the 1.77 acres that would fence the back part and the one corner. Be a 6-foot fence or 8-foot fence if I go through variance, and it'd have to be screened so they can't see in. Although there's no street view from that, but it's still, it's part of the variance requirement.
So most of it is fenced already?
It's already been fenced for years.
But
yes.
Is it screened?
It's not screened.
Okay, so it's fenced with open chain link or
It's
something?
open chain link. It's a 6-foot fence with barbed wire on it.
Right, and of course that wouldn't work for screening.
It's got to be screened. You got to put some kind of screening on the chain link fence to prevent site.
And the property owner next to you said that you're stacking cars already?
Can you go back to that picture?
Yeah, there's some cars stacked in the back.
So 6 foot wouldn't work for that, would it?
It wouldn't. That would be something we haven't addressed until this is resolved, but that will be addressed. Part of the issue is waiting for this to be addressed, and that would be addressed and taken care of. So that would be resolved. Heavy industrial, I mean, I'm not trying to throw others, but you can drive down that street, there's other with stacked cars. But I'm not trying to throw anybody else, but it's not the first, and it's not visible from the street, but we would address the issue. Didn't think it would be a problem, but.
Well, I don't understand this business. Tell me, what happens to these cars eventually that are double stacked?
Recycled. It's depending on we find a buyer for the vehicle and recycle them. That's the whole point of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically junk cars.
How much do you deal in RVs? I see a couple.
As little as possible. If the sheriff wouldn't call me on them, I mean, a lot of the cars I have are basically from vehicles that the sheriff calls out because of other issues that I have to pick them up. And I was one person that didn't say no. So
is it typical to get stuck with an RV?
That's the most expensive thing to destroy, and I get paid nothing for it. I mean, it's tough to get rid of it.
Question of staff: when was this zoned for industrial to begin with?
Germany. The question is that when it got rezoned to light industrial?
Yes.
Well, a large piece of property first got rezoned in 1997. It was, I think it was a 40-acre or 10-acre parcel. I think it was a 40-acre parcel. Let me show you the map. As you can see, the property to the south and east, it used to be one single piece of property, including the 5 acres that are owned by Mr. Sanders. So that got rezoned in 1997 to light industrial. That's why we don't have a size limit, a parcel size limit. Back in 97, we didn't have the 1 acre, 2 acre, or 3 acre parcel size. And the other parcel to the north, which is the 1.77 acres in size that has a house, that got rezoned in 2002 to light industrial.
Mr. Chairman, are there any other heavy industrial properties around in that area?
No, sir, there are none.
About the sheriff's office, is that your number one customer?
One of them. I mean, we work for all the police departments. We work for Border Patrol. We work for several. That's the ones that are mainly there, yes.
Sanders, do you do any crushing there? Do you
No,
crush
we
the
don't.
vehicles?
Crushing requires another whole process, yeah. And I mean, like I said, ADEQ has been out 3 times. I've turned over to the staff. They've had an audit 3 times. We're complete compliant, all fluids, everything's, and our lot's self-contained. If it actually drained, it would drain to, because the canal broke once. If it drained, it drains to 3E, because I guess the way the elevation is, it's going to drain straight out my gate through 3E. So If it ever drained, it's gonna drain 2, 3 if there was ever an issue. It can't drain to the north or the south. They're higher. If they flood me. But like I said, I've had 3 separate ADEQ inspections, 1 in Surprise, 2 planned, and found no issues. All fluids, all batteries, everything stored and compliant. And that's been turned over, those copies are turned over to the city, or to the staff.
And when you bought this property, what was it being used for?
It was a transfer. The owner was George Hollis. He ran a transfer station. He sold the dump. So they stored material, and I have pictures. I still have several of his trash cans that he had left over, but he stored all types of material and stuff on the lot. I guess recycling type material.
Recycling.
That's what it was used for. So I didn't think I'd ever have an issue.
Mr. Chairman,
And I bought them in 2 separate pieces.
maybe for staff, what is the violation now?
Let me get a copy of the violation.
Storing inoperable vehicles.
Yes.
That's the vehicle has to run, which is kind of, that's what I say, the oxymoron.
You have a
You
tow
can
yard, but
operate
you
a
can't
tow
store
yard,
the vehicles.
But you can't, that's kind of I mean, especially when you have tow yards in residential area in the county. I didn't think I'd ever have an issue in light industrial.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, maybe this is a legal question, but when you have residential property, isn't there a requirement to have a buffer zone within that zoning to residential?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When you have a residential property or zone residential, a buffer is required.
There's exceptions in the county today.
Any other questions? From staff? And so it's just so you have no issues with the barriers that
No, and
addressing all those
the
issues?
17 feet in the front, we actually already put the fence back prior to thinking that would be an issue that would come up.
Can you go back to the front picture of the property from 3? Okay, so that's the barriers or the screening that would be required, all that frontage road and visibility. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? This moment from the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have another question for staff. Now, could you put up the map again one more time? I just want to make sure I'm right. Lot 18 and 19 are residential, is that correct?
No.
No, those lots are zone agriculture, rural area.
Okay, are there houses on those?
No, it's in citrus, but the zoning ordinance requires a buffer from agriculture to industrial.
You got a photograph, the photo aerial?
Yes.
It's also on the fly zone. It can't be residential.
Correct.
Just to answer your question regarding residential, if the property owner to the north wants to build a house, they're allowed to build a house because they have more than 5 acres. And so, yes, it can become residential.
Well, this is kind of,
The rural area 10-acre minimum zoning district allows agricultural uses. It would also allow the establishment of a home on that property. If the property is at least 5 or more contiguous commercial acres, it would be exempt from zoning. Even though the property is in the noise zones, they would be allowed to build a house on that property as long as they maintain the agriculture and the parcel is at least a minimum of 5 acres. Just to add a little more clarification to this property. The property is in the 70 to 74 decimal noise zone. The land use designation is agriculture industrial. This zoning change does not require an amendment to the comprehensive plan. It is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and that is why staff is recommending approval.
Mr. Chairman, I got one argument with that because you have an area north of it that could be residential, but there's no barriers there. You're going from heavy industrial to residential, even though it's ag right now, it could be residential, so that's my argument.
Mr. Chairman, the residential uses are not allowed within the 70 to 70 decimal noise zone.
Okay.
We would have to, we'll be.
Yeah, no, okay. I thought you said at 5 acres it could.
No.
Mr. Chairman, can I explore one thing with staff? the choice that the applicant had would have been to go for a special use permit or a variance and retain his zoning. Would that have offered any additional safeguards? I mean, what could they do with heavy industrial that they couldn't do with light industrial with a variance?
Well,
Or-
Mr. Chairman, the heavy industrial zone, if this gets rezoned to heavy industrial, they will be able to do everything that is permitted on the heavy industrial zoning district. Not only the junkyard, but they can change their use later in the future if they want to. The special use permit, the difference between rezoning and the special use permit is that they're limited to a certain uses with the special use permit, and we can include conditions that will limit the operation of the property to, that one specific use, and also we can limit other things for operation.
I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, but in this case, I guess, I'm wondering, the property owners that are objecting, they just object to the current use. They're not as concerned about what might happen later as they are the current use from the letters that I read. Did you feel that from the letters you read?
It seems that, yeah, the letters are specific to this type of use, but maybe they're not aware of what other use of the heavy industrial will allow.
So no, so wouldn't it make more sense then to do this as a special use? And for protection of the neighboring,
The property owner was given the option of a special use permit or a zone change. The owner chose to proceed with changing the zoning of the property.
Yeah.
What makes more sense really doesn't.
Right. No, I get it, but I'm
a
just saying.
recommendation.
I'm just saying the conversation would be different if we're doing a special use, because we could always say, 5 years, come back or whatever, what are we doing, 10 years, whatever, versus just changing it completely and hopefully in 10 years from now, they'll open a wastewater plant or something.
But to explore a little bit more, I mean, for this residential use, I mean, those 10-acre parcels could be split into 2 5s perhaps, and you could end up with, 8 homes in that area?
No, they can't.
No.
The zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan currently do not allow the splitting of those parcels.
They can't be split,
can't.
so you're gonna be allowed 4 total homes in that area then on those neighboring sides.
There's a
Not with the
possibility if those property owners want to establish a home or a home site.
On 5 acres.
But they remain RA10. Yeah, RA10, you're able to have one residential on the 10 acres, but you have to remain the 5 acres of that. So that
Wouldn't be much.
That would be very, very hard, and especially with the noise, decibel, practically hard, impossible.
Have to stay under the ag exempt
Right.
rule, and they can only get a few residents.
Right.
MCAS is supportive, they just want an ag.
They
or
just, yes. sure.
Navigational easement.
And that's normally who we have an issue with more of. This is too.
This is probably ideal for them.
Right.
Just don't like the idea of.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, one
Neighbors
thing
don't
that
want
I
it.
do understand that heavy industrial has its place. I don't know whether this is the correct place. It's just like we were talking, one of the people come up and talked about it. Uses with a heavy industrial use usually you have specific areas for your heavy industrial. And that's my only concern. This is light industrial. And one of the biggest things, light industrial, you can't have a lot of things. Heavy industrial, you can have everything. You can have a slaughterhouse. You can have all kinds of stuff. So that zoning is very specific. I have concerns about that. And that's the only concern I have, really.
But right now, we're discussing the option to approve this as heavy industrial. Unless it doesn't pass by the commission, that would be a different discussion if the applicant comes back for a special use as light industrial, correct? So at this point, any further questions, discussions? Do I have a motion or any further questions, concerns? Staff recommends it.
I'd like to present a motion.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to go with rezoning case 1914 as presented for approval.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, okay. What happens when we don't have a second? We've never had that before.
Motion dies.
Do I have a new motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to deny the request.
I'll second.
My reasoning is what this heavy industrial could become and that all the neighbors currently oppose the rezoning.
My second, I don't like to get rid of a violation just by rezoning something either. I agree with Commissioner White.
Similar, I believe, on the frontage road, north of I-8, that there was some due diligence that was not done, and I think we kind of got here again, so.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against?
Aye, nay.
Okay. Motion. What is?
Motion carries.
Motion carries, right? With and the applicant get with staff in regards to bringing it back as a light industrial special use permit, I guess. Okay. Item number 9, special use permit case number 1907.
Mr. Chairman, special use permit 1907. This is a request to allow the commercial condominium on a parcel 1.76 net acres in size, zone general commercial C2. The subject property is located at 11375 South Fortuna Road, Yuma, Arizona. Just to let you know, this building was built in 2018, and the property owner is requesting to split the spaces or the suites into parcels, and the special use permit is required for commercial condominiums. The vicinity map here shows parcel 23 located to the north, zone C2, and it's the location of a gas station, and I think we have Burger King there. Parcel 241 and 242 to the west are zone C2, and we have a Verizon store and the Chevron gas station. Parcel 153 to the south is zone C2, and is the location of West Fargo Bank and a retail building. Parcels to the east are zone manufactured home subdivision, 4,500 square foot lots, and is the location of Yuma East Mesa subdivision, residential subdivision. The site plan here submitted by the applicant shows existing building with suites that will become, those suites will become commercial condominiums. As you can see, the layout has 2 points of access, one from Fortuna Road and the second exit from 34 Place. The next slide shows a picture of the subject property looking north from 34 Place. And we have another view looking northeast or northeast from 34 Place. And the last pictures from view on the back of the building looking northwest. Letters we received from MCAS requesting a navigation disclosure statement, and staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Performance conditions within 60 days of a board of supervisors approval. The owner needs to record in a waiver and navigation disclosure statement. And the second condition is that the owner applicant shall record a final plat subdividing the subject property as shown on the site plan within 3 years of the board of supervisors approval of this special use permit case. And the applicant has already submitted a tentative map, which is next on the agenda. Any questions for staff?
Not at this moment. Any questions concerns from commissioners? No? Okay. This time I'll go ahead and open up for the public. If anyone wants to speak on behalf or against this project.
Good evening, Barry Olson, 101 East Second Street, Yuma, Arizona. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. If there are any questions, I realize this is the first of 3 cases relative to this project. But as to this aspect, it seems like it's simple.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, it is, and, you know, I just even add a note. That's a beautiful project. It's really nice. I've been there. It's nice.
Kind of makes you want to order a Bernardo sandwich.
Yeah.
Just looking at the picture.
Any additional questions, comments? No? Okay. Thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval of special use. Oh, I'm reading this right. Special.
I'll second that.
Yes, that was special, as presented.
Fine.
For the record, we do have one commissioner that will be abstaining from vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, motion carries. Item number 10, request for modifications to subdivision regulations for the proposed Fortuna Palms Plaza Commercial Condominium Subdivision. Staff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a request for 6 modifications from subdivision regulations and public works standards for this proposed Fortuna Palms Plaza subdivision, located at 11375 South Fortuna Road. Modification number 1 from section 4.15E, residential roads. It is requested by the developer not to install roll vertical curve and sidewalks on 34 Place and Phoenix Drive. The engineering division recommends approval of this request since there are no existing sidewalks throughout the area. The next slide here shows the area where curbs and sidewalks will not be installed. Modification number 2, a modification from section 4.15D, residential collector type street. It is requested by the developer not to improve a quarter section road, 34th Street, along the northern subdivision line. The engineering division recommends approval of this request since there is no dedication of road improvements along the alignment. And the next slide or map shows the alignment. We don't have any roads to the east. And the next slide shows that we have no right-of-way. Modification number 3 from section 4.13 right-of-way and easements. It is requested by the developer not to provide right-of-way for internal roads and streets. The engineering division recommends approval of this request since the private streets are already constructed. The slide here shows existing private roads. We have modification number 4 from section 4.22B sidewalks. It is requested by the developer not to provide sidewalks along the internal streets and perimeter streets. The engineering division recommends approval of this request since there are no existing sidewalks throughout the area and the improvements are already constructed. The next slide shows the location of internal roads with no sidewalks. Modification number 5, section 4.12C, intersections and corners. The developer is proposing not to provide at street corners a minimum of 25 by 25 right-of-way chamfer at the intersection of the property lines. Intersection of 34 Place and Phoenix Drive, and 34 Place and entrance to the subdivision. The next slide shows at the bottom the location of those chamfers. The engineering division recommends denial of this request that the developer shall provide 24 by 24 chamfer along the perimeter street to ensure proper line of sight. 25 by 25. The site plan shows the location of the, oh, sorry, I've already said that. Modification number 6, the last one from section 4.19, private roads. It is requested by the developer not to build a private roads in accordance with public works standards. The engineering division recommends approval of this request since the private streets are already constructed. The next slide shows the public works standard for commercial roads. And you already know the location of those private roads. Staff is recommending approval of modification 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And it's recommended denial for modification number 5. Mr. Sherman, this concludes the staff presentation for modifications. Any questions for staff?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on item number 5? What the difference would be if they remain the way they are versus not?
Well, the chamfers, I think they are required to make sure that you're gonna be have visibility when you turn on those corners. Right now, the applicant hasn't dedicated the corners as part of the right-of-way. So that means that they can have landscaping or other things obstructing the view, and that's probably the reason why engineering is recommending a denial.
Mr. Chairman, the purpose of the chamfer is to ensure a proper line of sight.
Oh, I understand that. My question is, this is not an old establishment. It got approved last year whenever it got finished. Why that wasn't required at that point? Or what's the difference between now and then that it changed? Did the code change, or why are we?
Chairman, this is a subdivision. When the applicants apply for a subdivision, we have different requirements for subdivisions, and that's the reason why now we have to enforce the subdivision requirements, and the chamfer's part of the subdivision requirements.
And that is a residential?
This is a commercial
Right,
project.
I understand that, but the code is a residential subdivision?
No, Mr. Chairman, the reason that chamfers were not required was that development was built under building permits. The intent now is to subdivide the parcel into commercial condominiums. Therefore, the development requires compliance with the subdivision regulations.
I get that.
The zoning ordinance does not require chamfers at street corners. The subdivision regulations require chamfers at street corners.
I get that. I'm just trying to figure out the side of the line of sight, what the difference is, whether if it was or wasn't. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out the difference.
Requirements of the different regulatory documents.
The mindset to it. That's what I'm trying to
So
figure out.
this becomes a subdivision since it's going to condominiums,
Yes.
but it's a commercial project.
Okay. Any other questions from any other commissioners? That was my question on this.
Yeah, the chamfers, if it was just, sorry, Chairman, but if this building was just completed, now they want chamfers, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we can go back and say, when we dealt with this last time, we were constrained by having to do a commercial project within the confines of residential zoning ordinances and residential regulations. We talked about maybe even trying to develop some commercial subdivision codes or some commercial regulations, but there wasn't enough to justify it. So I understand why staff's having an issue. It just probably be easier explained when we get the applicant up here.
Or if they have an issue with it, they might be okay with it. I'm just trying to picture in my mind, if it remains the way it is for another 10 years, the chamfer's not there, what's the difference?
It is
Just,
kind
yeah.
of hard to understand there's nothing changing. I mean, the buildings are built, the traffic is in place. It's a little hard for the applicant, of course, or one of us who are building things to understand what difference does it make, but staff, it makes a difference.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think they're still having to make decisions based on,
on a residential code that doesn't work well.
you need another tool in their box.
At this time, I'll go to any other questions from the commissioners? So I can bring up the applicant and see if they're okay with this requirement, and if it is, good. If not, give us why.
Barry Olson, 101 2nd Street, Yuma, Arizona. To put this in perspective of what's going on this week, this project is no different than if the 49ers wore their white jerseys or their red jerseys, and the same with the Chiefs. I don't want to offend anybody that might be cheering for a team this weekend, but my point is, philosophical is, we're trying to promote development in Yuma. And when you looked at the site plan, I've been with Mr. Waite when this project first started. Both Mr. Dahl and I worked with him. We did the land division to split off the piece that was used for Shays and then the Verizon piece. We did the chamfer on the corner, it would be the southwest corner of Fortuna and 34th. No chamfer was required of this lot. We built the project, went to the county, did everything we were supposed to do. Now we're basically making it a condominium, and I think some of you may be aware, the reason we're making it a condominium is we've got some small business owners, Bernardo's, who would like to own their own restaurant, the American dream. That's what Mr. White has established with this project. That's why he gets a little bit irate when these additional requirements get imposed that make absolutely no sense. The project's developed, you saw the pictures, it's beautiful. There's no reason to require a chamfer here. The regulations don't fit in this instance. This project scored 285 out of 300. I thought if we ever had a project that I could get a 300 out of 300, this was it. And we missed it by 15, and this is the 15 points. So we would ask that item 5, that we not be required to put in the chamfers. You've seen the project. If you have any questions, I'd be more glad to answer those.
So nothing is changing on the project, and it's working fine the way it is.
Correct. The other thing I bring up is part of the project is we are creating a property owners association. So this, where these chamfers are located, will be owned by the association. We can't build anything in there anyways. It'll be maintained by the association, so it keeps the aesthetic appearance that we lack in a lot of subdivisions that you get with an association.
Is the subdivision regulation for the chamfers and the staff's mindset because maybe down the road someone could decide to put a sign there in the corner and block the the view, or I'm still trying to grasp the reasoning why it's a big issue for this item. Let's see what staff says. Is it a right-of-way issue or?
To Alvarez Engineering Division, keep in mind they were comparing apples and oranges. This is a subdivision. When it was approved back then, it was approved under a commercial development. We are guided by certain guidelines versus on a commercial development. Once you jump into a subdivision, it brings a whole lot of set of rules that we have to go by. Keep in mind, these set of rules were approved by the Board of Supervisors. It's a requirement. It's not something that we're making up or having the developer to provide. It's a requirement that if somebody else would come in and develop that area as a subdivision, they would have to require to pave the road, pave the outside road, provide sidewalks, handicap ramps, and so forth. It is a requirement.
I get the requirement part.
Yes, it's to ensure that nobody blocks that line of sight.
Okay, that's
so have you ever been to a street where you're
right.
coming in, there's a block wall, you have to pull in ahead of time to make sure there's no vehicle coming in? That's to prevent that.
So that's what it is for, to
Yeah,
prevent.
that's what it is, yeah.
There's no other way that it could be done by providing the right of way?
It ensures that the proper line of sight is kept.
Okay, so that's the issue there. All right. That's what I'm trying to grasp,
Yes.
why. So right now, let's say they weren't trying to do condominiums, what would it do, and someone wanted to put a sign right now, how would that be controlled?
We wouldn't, there's nothing in the engineering part of site, that requires them to provide a chamfer. Now, that's why we have the subdivision regulations that provide us that guide.
But how would you control that right now? If someone tomorrow decided to put a sign there in the corner, that would be a building permit issue violation?
They would have, yeah, but that would be dedicated to the county, so they wouldn't be able to provide any, they wouldn't allow them.
Right now, it doesn't allow it.
No.
So, and
Well, he could go in and put it whatever he wants, but that's not right away. That's his property. So what we're doing is we're asking for a chamfer to dedicate it to the public, in essence, to the county.
Okay. Any other questions? I see where the safety part is like the other thing with the heavy industrial. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. I get what you're saying, but.
I understand, and it takes a real engineer's mind to be able to look at the exact same fruit and say one's an apple and one's an orange. Because it's the exact same thing. And I understand the confines that you guys have to work in, and subdivision has a different regulation.
Mm-hmm.
But for practicality, nothing is changing. So if it's not dangerous now, it wasn't dangerous then, and it would be, it'd be hard to find a reason to apply new regulations to a project that's done with nothing changing. just because we want to have individual businessmen own their own section of that building. So I understand it's tough for you guys to have to work with those regulations that don't fit this project, but.
I guess the trigger is the subdivision. Once you
Understand.
trigger that, it's a different ballgame.
I understand, but it's a residential subdivision guidelines that you're having to apply to a
No,
commercial.
the subdivision doesn't differ between, there's no difference between commercial and
I understand,
subdivision
that's the
residential.
reason we needed 60-foot roads at one point,
Mhm.
but just doesn't work all the time when you're doing commercial projects. But I understand your defense of it.
Okay.
Does the applicant have issues with the Schaefer's for getting this one item done versus
Yeah,
6?
yes, we are opposed to the chamfers. A couple of points on it
What are they called? Chambers? Schaefer's? Chambers?
is dedicating these to the county creates another issues because the county gonna maintain the landscaping, the county gonna maintain what we put in. That would be something that have to be addressed. Doesn't make any sense. The county has difficulty maintaining what it has anyways. But if we just did nothing, if we just said, keep it the way it is, so what's the difference from a public safety standpoint? If I kept the project as it is today, there's no difference to public safety than if I create a subdivision. A subdivision doesn't create any more of a public safety issue than the existing use does.
That's the part I'm having an issue
Yeah,
with.
that's, to me, it's common sense.
Well, one question, isn't that already landscaped and completely finished off in that?
Yeah, there was a
area?
picture of it that
Yeah.
showed the exact it was right from that chamfer, and you can see there's nothing there. Mr. Waite would like to speak.
My comment, he's already used his 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Ross Waite from 11763 East Via Canada. One thing that's been said a couple times that is not exactly correct. Just stated that because it's a subdivision, that's why it's being required. Right now, T&W LLC owns the land and building, a sole owner. It is being, I will deed it, not within 3 years, but within 3 hours probably, to the Fortuna Palms Plaza Owners Association. They will own the building and land and everything. Now, when that happens, T&W LLC will then have the right, the exclusive use and right of those spaces. The building's not being subdivided. I talked with Joe Worley prior to even doing this project. So he is going to have parcel numbers, 9 of them, 8 for the individual suites that are there, and then 1 for the overall parcel and building. He is only identifying the 8 suites with a parcel number so he can tax them. And the owners association will be taxed a minimal amount, and that's just the way it's done. And so I'm not creating any new parcels. I'm not creating any new land. I'm not actually doing a subdivision. I was required to go into that because that's what they said I had to do. And you got to look at it this way. New York, Chicago, you have a 100-story building. The first 4 floors are 5 floors are retail, offices, this and that. And then you got all these, quote, condominiums above. Well, I've got, number 9300 on the 93rd floor, and that's where my condo is. I don't own it. I have the exclusive right to use it. And so I'm buying and selling that exclusive right. It's not split. It's not a subdivision. It's just the way, there's no other way to do it in the situation I just told you. And so anyway, I just want to make clear that they're saying this is a subdivision issue, and it's not a subdivision. It's going from one single owner to another single owner with 8 people with the exclusive right to use it. Thank you.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
Of airspace is into 6 or more lots is a subdivision.
No, no one's arguing that. He's just comparing.
Mr. Wade just stated it's not a subdivision. This falls within the definition of subdividing or a subdivision, which is what triggered the requirements that are presented before you today. It is staff's jobs to enforce the regulations, the ordinances, the regulatory documents that have been adopted by the Board of Supervisors. That is why this item is before you today for recommendation, which will then be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for final action.
Same as ours.
Okay, any further questions or concerns? Anyone else from the public? I will now bring it back to the commission.
Would you accept a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'd move to approve all requests for modifications.
Second.
All staff suggested or all?
All of the, I don't know,
Six?
seven?
Six.
Six? All six modification requests.
Got a motion? To-
Yes to all modifications.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we got a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against? Okay. Item number 11, Fortuna Palms Plaza Commercial Condominium Subdivision. Tentative map. Staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant requests approval of tentative map for the proposed Fortuna Palms Plaza subdivision consisting of 8 commercial lots, zone C2. The subdivision, as you know, is located at 11375 South Fortuna Road, Yuma, Arizona. We have the vicinity map. You're familiar with this, and the next slide shows a existing building layout. Staff is recommending the approval of the tentative map for Fortuna Palms Plaza subdivision, subject to the following conditions. Condition number 1, approval by the Board of Supervisors of the requested modification of the subdivision regulations. If any of the requested modifications are denied, the tentative map shall be revised to meet the requirements of the subdivision regulations. The revised tentative map should be submitted to the planning director within 30 days of the Board of Supervisors' action. And Mr. Chairman, we need to include another condition since the special use permit it needs to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. Condition number 2 will be approval by the Board of Supervisors of the special use permit 19-07.
Do you have that item number 2 on the screen or no? Item number 2, is that on the screen or
No,
is
it's not,
that was added on afterwards?
Yeah,
Okay.
since the special use permit is gonna go in front of the Board of Supervisors for approval almost at the same time as the modifications, we have to include this condition since it's gonna be a requirement.
Okay, all right. Any questions from the commissioners or staff? I mean, to staff? Or, no? Fire alarm going on or what's going on? At this time, I'll bring it up to the public or the applicant if anyone has questions from the public.
Yeah, Barry Olson, 101 East 2nd Street, Yuma, Arizona. Just one clarification. I think this is a typo. It refers to 7 lots. It's actually 8 suites or 8 spaces, not 7.
We got the new one corrected in there.
Okay. They got the new one.
Okay, no more questions or comments from the public or applicant? This time, we'll bring back to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, will you take a motion?
Yes, sir.
I would recommend approval of, is it number 11? Yep. Fortuna Palms Plaza Commercial Condominium Subdivision Tentative Map.
I'll second.
Okay, we have first and second, and this will be for the addendum item that was presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes. Item number, where we at, 12? Commission Initiative number 19-03. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have a presentation for this item. This is the text amendment that was initiated by the Planning Commission to add new requirements in the subdivision regulations for the regulation of lot ties. So the intent is to add two new sections to the subdivision regulations. Section 7.11, which is a lot requirement for a lot tie map within a recorded subdivision, and section 7.12, lot tie map not within a recorded subdivision. These changes were suggested by the county assessor to regulate lot ties. And what is before you today is what was initiated by the Planning Commission at the December Planning Commission's meeting.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Concerns?
No, except I thought we were done with this long time ago. So.
Our
yeah.
engineer's good with this, right?
Yep. No further questions. Do we open up this stuff to the public? Yeah. Okay. Anyone from the public to comment in regards to this initiative? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, will you take a motion?
Go for it.
I would recommend approval of the commission initiative number 19-03.
Second it.
Okay. We got a motion, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, initiative passes. Item number 13, proposed amendment to the DDS fee schedule to adopt new fees for lot ties.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in addition to amending the subdivision regulations to add a new process and requirement for lot ties, staff is proposing to add a fee for processing of lot tie maps. Staff is recommending a fee which is depicted or shown on your staff report or air form. A fee of 601.76 for a lot tie that is not within recorded subdivisions. And then a lot tie map for in recorded subdivisions of 384.30. There's a difference because once a recorded subdivision is approved, it will require a different process to amend that subdivision. So the fee for that is $384.30. Staff is seeking the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the suggested fees by staff, or the Planning Commission could suggest a different fee.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Can't we round these up? Or did you come up with this 30 cents, 76 cents?
You got it right here.
Complicated formula calculation. And there it is.
Or round it down, but not up.
We could
Whether you
round
round it down or up, but I think we should
to,
round it.
to 300 and 150.
I like the pain cat. Leave it alone. It's fine.
Like I said, the Planning Commission can recommend
Understand.
a fee totally different than what staff is recommending.
No, you said we can't go up.
Lower.
See, so yeah, see, I got you. I'm fine with the fees the way they are, but it's up to you guys. You want to go through all this hassle? All right. Any questions, concerns? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to make a motion
Okay, you don't even
to round down on the lot tie map within recorded subdivision $600, and then lot tie map in a recorded subdivision 380.
Do I need to bring in the public for this option? Yeah. Just, I have a motion, but I'm going
I'll
to
second the motion, and then you can get public input.
Anyone from the public have any questions, concerns? Want to make it cheaper, lower, higher? Seeing none, back to the commission. So we have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, we took away the cents.
Thanks for rounding down. That makes more sense.
Makes less
Crazy
sense.
when I get cents. I do big budgets, and when you got 20 cents, it's like, what?
All right, commission initiative number 1904.
I can't get it all
Yeah.
on the one line, the amount line.
The box, on the Excel box, one little box. You have to extend it.
Mr. Chairman, this is a commission initiative to amend the zoning ordinance, section 1107.00, temporary buildings and uses. And the sections proposed A4, we're proposing to add section 1107.01C and D, amend sections 1107.03, 1107.04, 1107.04, I mean 5, and add sections 1107.06 and 1107.07. These changes were reviewed by the Board of Supervisors in a work session and also by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission initiated this text amendment on December 3rd, and staff is recommending approval of the changes as presented.
Any questions from the board? Concerns, comments? Seeing none. Any questions from the public? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of Commission Initiative Number 19-05 as presented.
04?
Oh, I'm sorry, 04, I got one.
I'll second that.
We have a corrected motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? All right. Commission Initiative Number 1905. Staff? Much. We want dark skies.
Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Chairman, in your agenda packet today are the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance to adopt or create the dark sky overlay district. Which is adding section 623.00, the zoning ordinance, and amending the official zoning ordinance. These proposed changes were presented to the Board of Supervisors on a couple occasions, and then they were initiated by the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 3rd. Your staff report contains the proposed wording for the new section of the zoning ordinance.
Dark sky.
It's the dark sky overlay district.
Sounds like Star
And
Wars.
also, there's a map in your packet which indicates the area of the county that will be subject to the dark sky, compliance with the dark sky overlay district. That area of the county is east of Foothills Boulevard, all the way to the eastern county line of the
Weird lot in the
So-
backyard.
Staff is recommending approval of Commission
Mr. Chairman, just a question or two here, because we got into issues with this dark sky thing before, years ago. And mainly, it was due to ropers and, you know, arena lights and stuff like that. So I'm concerned, is there any areas in the MESA that are included in this?
Mr. Chairman, no, the area that will be subject to the dark sky overlay district is the area of the county that's east of Foothills Boulevard.
That's, okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure that was correct. Okay.
We haven't received any objections from the public or any more comments from the public that you're aware of?
No, Mr. Chairman, staff did not receive any comments for or against this.
How far
There
east
was a
is-
display that was published in the newspaper, and staff did not receive any.
This will be east of Foothills Boulevard all the way to the end of the county.
Yes.
So how about that border patrol station that's out there?
Certain uses are exempt from the zoning.
Yeah,
Like the federal government.
yeah.
Now, what if one of those, I'm assuming they would need to get a permit or something, like one of those golf courses that are east of Foothills Boulevard wants to have a one-night concert? Is that gonna be an issue, or is that like a special one-day permit they need to request?
They would have to request a variance from the zoning ordinance, which would be presented to the Board of Adjustment if
This,
they want to deviate from the requirements of the zoning.
Or like a one-day use?
Mr. Chairman, and those are some of the issues that can happen in this dark sky. I mean, I don't disagree with it, I just.
I'm
I
just
just
thinking
remember-
because it's going all the way to Welton, so does Welton have an input in this? I mean, is this gonna affect them as a city, or is this only for the county property around Welton?
Mr. Chairman, this is for the unincorporated area.
Okay.
Anything that's within the city of Yuma, the town of Welton would not.
Okay. So if it's incorporated,
I just
suspect it'll be really hard to sight those lights in that one night and get them turned off before, before
I'm
they're
just
out of
asking
there.
questions. I know those golf courses in that area, and they might have
Them,
something going on one day or another.
those drones are really nice nowadays.
Yeah, just laser on them.
Does that affect the hikers on Telegraph Path with their flashlights in the morning and all that?
Headlamps.
Especially hikers.
I'm all for darkness, but not that much darkness. That's up to you. All right. Bring it back up to the commissioners. All right.
We're night hiking.
Are they going in the morning? 5 in the morning? I see the lights always like.
Never hiked it.
Yeah, they do. There's some wild
Snipe
people.
hunters.
Did we open it to the public?
At this point, I'll bring it up to the public. If anyone from the public has any issues in regards to Dark Skies Initiative, move forward. Seeing none, I will now bring it back to the commissioners for comment or motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, since my supervisor Darren Simmons recommended this, I will move that we recommend approval of Commission Initiative number 1905 as presented.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
I'm gonna say nay just because I'm protecting my reputation.
Me too.
Just one.
Two nays.
What part of your reputation?
Oh, well, it's bad, but I'm
The
trying
good
to
part.
talk about it.
Item number 16, discussion by the commission members of planning director events, 10 current events, and schedule for future planning commission meetings. Anyone have anything exciting to say from the commissioners or staff?
Discussion.
No?
Pretty please.
Yes, okay.
We've talked, or we had a case come up, maybe a year or so ago, and it came down to commercial versus residential. I believe it was a project that was on Fortuna.
Subdivision?
Subdivision. There were street sizes of the widths of streets that fit more into residential, not commercial. I believe actually Mr. Dahl was commenting that up in Phoenix, they have another code for those types of things. I know in the city of Yuma, there is I believe there's a commercial code and a residential code. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware
Oh,
of whether it's a different code. The city of Yuma has a different code.
okay, all right. Could we do an initiative to look into that to see if there is one and possible of adopting that for the county?
Mr. Chairman, that would require changes to the public works standards, and that's something that I can talk to the county engineer about. That is a different department that I'm in, but I will certainly bring that up to his attention, and we'll have them make a presentation to you.
Let's just go ahead and add it for a future agenda, please.
Yeah, well, you had one other item, didn't you?
I mean, I know City of San Luis as well is looking into the commercial standards and the residential, so it doesn't hurt to take a look at it in the county and see where we're at.
The county's starting to grow, and I think there's more of this coming about where sometimes I don't know if they have all the tools they need.
Right.
Well, the foothills are growing commercial area.
Well, I think you're gonna see Ross Wade have one right across the street from the one we just saw.
Actually, I think there's one that is the one that Kevin Dahl was talking about last time. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got that as an agenda item, that way they could discuss it and present it or do whatever needs to be done for future, for the next meeting or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to report that at one of our last meetings, we dealt with Albert's Tar Shop over on North Frontage Road. Wanted to report that Albert was able to meet his things, and the Board of
Requirements.
Supervisors did issue his special use permit.
I'm glad.
So it turned out really well. The gentleman that was here listening got hold of it. He went and met with them, figured out their cost, actually found a fire hydrant, so they didn't have to put a fire hydrant in, so that made it doable for them.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's going to be able to meet his.
Well, it's so special when you got a hardworking family there, and
Yeah, they want
all these things are.
So I know none of us felt good about denying that, but as
I
it
know.
turned out, it worked.
Economically worked out for him, so, all right, great. Thanks for the update.
Don't say none of it, because I didn't deny it, right?
I thought you voted with us after you
No.
lost.
No. All right, anything else from the commissioner? See, what it did. I told you so. All right. Anyone else have any comments or suggestions? No? Staff? Anything from you guys? we're crazy. You know, you want to get rid of us already? Go home. All right.
Impeachment.
Invalidate.
Impeachment.
That's a good